find my cool outfit. It's cold in Florida. I wasn't warm enough in my leggings, so I put sweats over them. Anyway, just want to double check. This is correct, right?
What do you mean?
Outlet. Wire. Today, some electrical talk. Yesterday we actually started, but we weren't sure we actually knew what we were doing fully, so didn't really want to film that as we were going through, because we did mess up, and that will be something I talk about later, so you don't do the same. But basically yesterday and then this morning, we finished running our DC wiring to the appliances. That does not include the puck lights. So when you are pre-wiring, you're not going to pre-wire the puck lights because that will be a separate type of wiring that I'll get into later. But right now I just want to explain what we did for the DC appliances. So you can kind of see this wire right here. That's the type of wire that we were using for the DC appliances. So it's 12-2, so 12 gauge wire, 2 strands is what that means. And you want it 12 gauge because basically what we were reading is that's big enough for the amount of current that is going to be using, or the amount of voltage, power, we're going to say power, seems like an all-encompassing term, the amount of power to go, that needs to go through that wire to get to the appliances and then back to the battery. And then you want it stranded because it's more flexible to move around as the van moves around. So as you can see in this one, it has this nice little coating here, which helps protect the wires. This one is actually marine grade coating that I can link down below. It's just supposed to be stronger and better for, whoa, hello. Alright. Supposed to be stronger and better for things that move, like boats and vans. So that's why I went with the marine grade, just to be safer, because you never know. And we got 100 feet of that, and honestly it was almost perfect. We're just gonna have to get a little bit more for a few of the other random things we're doing around. First things first, this is where our electrical home base is going to be with the battery, the inverter. Every single wire is gonna come back here. So as you can see, there's a bunch of wires already here. And what we did when we ran them is made sure to label each one so we know what it meant. So this one's called CL Dimmer 1, which has to do with the ceiling lights. Dimmer 1, which is my living room area and not the bed. VF, man, these wires are hard to turn. VF is vent fan, so that runs to the vent fan. And then if you go back over here, it says VF, so we know that's exactly what this is for. And then what we made sure to do, because we read this a lot, is to make sure that there's extra wire on the outside, or extra wire from where you think you need to go. So technically we think this will need to go like right here, but we have about 18 inches to 2 feet of extra wiring on each side. So for the vent fan, which is in the front of the van, we ran it through here, over to the ceiling, through this side, and then down the middle of the van, back into this part, don't mind that, and then down to the electrical box. So that's the vent fan, and that's basically all we actually ran over to the ceiling. My fridge is going to be over here, so we ran one just along here, into there and up and around, and you can see we have this fridge. We have the bed light dimmer, which is literally right here. So we just had to run that one pretty short down here. So that's basically all of these wires. Over here is going to need to be one because this is the switch, which will be over here, to my puck lights. So we ran this, and again, I know I already said don't run your puck lights, but this wire is going to connect to the switch, not the puck lights themselves. So this wire goes back over to the battery section, through the ceiling, up and around, down into here. And that one is to connect from the battery to the dimmer switch itself. And then just in case I ran an extra wire, you never know, I've actually seen people use their extra wires, and I'd rather have that than not have that. So all of that wiring is a total of 100 feet. One other thing that we are going to have to pre-wire that we haven't yet, just because we want to put the bed framing in first, is the toilet. So I have a Natureside composting toilet, and that needs to be vented, and part of the vent needs to be connected to the DC power. Therefore, I need a 12 gauge wire that is going to go from the toilet over to my power bank. So that's another thing that I'm going to have to pre-wire. And then... Oh, okay, let me switch this around. And then I also realized that everyone seems to get chilly when it gets a little cold, even with insulation. So I am going to use a Chinese diesel heater. That will be a completely separate video, but there does need to be a DC wire hooked to that. So that's going to be another pre-wire that we do. We're just not sure where that's going to go yet. But that is something, if you get a diesel heater, you will need a DC wire to go back to the battery bank. So all of that is the DC wiring, the 12-2 gauge marine grade wire. Now what I'm going to do is start with the AC wiring, which is separate from the DC wiring. So the DC is like the fridge, dimmer switches, if I were to get a water heater. And yeah, that's about all for right now. AC is what you would know of as your typical house wiring or house appliances with outlets. So the reason why you need different wires is because AC outlets or AC power have outlets which also need a ground wire, which means you're using 12-3. 3 meaning there are 3 strands. Your positive, your negative, and your ground wire. So I went to Home Depot and Lowe's and an auto parts store today and found that 12-3 is kind of hard to come by, but we're like ready for this step, and Amazon doesn't have it for like another month, and I don't want to wait for that. So a little hack in an extension cord that you would find in your house or Home Depot and Lowe's is actually a 12-3 wire. So 12 gauge, 3 strands, perfect for your AC outlets. So we bought 150 strand and 125. Hopefully I don't need more than this 50, but didn't want to have to go back again. But it's actually the same price as any other wiring you would get that has a ground wire. So just a little hack, if you want to use an extension cord, you're just gonna cut this part off and then voila, you have a wire. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that now to all the places where I'm going to have outlets. So come on.
Feel it in my bones, I can feel it in my veins.
Oh my gosh!
Hands in the sky, I can feel the winds of change. You live and you learn.
Alright, so we successfully ran this AC wire, so the 12-3 with the ground wire, to our first outlet, which is over here, where the cabinet's going to be, where you walk in the door. So I am going to label it, and this one is going to be called AC1. Voila, AC1. Starting to think after that one wiring that I just did on the other side of the van to the switch that 50 is definitely not enough, because this is all I have left. I have to wire 3 more outlets, so good thing I bought the 25 too. Alright, we can go up here, do this one. Alright, right now we are protecting the wires from any sharp corners or any weird movement that the van might have that might pull a wire onto one of the corners. Basically every single of the little holes that we have in the van that we put wires through, or the sharp corners where we run it over from like the ceiling to a different part. We are putting this conduit that I bought off of Amazon for $25. We bought two, but now looking at how much we have, I don't think we actually need the second one. Pro tip, put the conduit on before you run the wires, or else it's a little bit harder. You're working kind of backwards. So that's what we're doing right now. And then after we run the conduit onto the part of the wire that we want it to be on, we are using some of this electrical tape just to make sure that it stays shut since it opens like this. So then we're just kind of putting the electrical tape around it to keep it in. And then in other parts where it's kind of smaller and we don't need an actual piece of conduit, we are putting a grommet, and then I siliconed it to make sure it stays for extra protection. So that's the grommet in there. And then we have some of our conduit down here that I used for this piece because it was kind of just a sharp corner. There's actually a hole in here that you can't see in the camera that is sharp. So that's why I put that there. And then taped the edges so that we're good to go there. And here's Dad struggling to get the conduit onto the wires that we already ran.
Things turn around, didn't ever think they could. I'm done with the bad, I need a little bit of.
I also just wanted to clear up, now that I feel a little more experienced in my wiring department, exactly what the 12-2 DC wiring does for the puck lights. So basically we ran two 12-2 wires over to the dimmer switches that I'm going to have. Those wires go from the dimmer switch to the battery bank. So they're 12-2 DC wires. From those dimmer switches, we need a completely different wire that goes to the puck light. Because the puck light wiring is 22, it would be way more complicated to hook that to 12 gauge wire, and it's unnecessary. So we ran 14 gauge wire, and instead of just getting 14 2 stranded wire, we got two separate positive and negative wires to use that are 14 gauge wire. So this is the location of one of the dimmer switches. It's actually going to go over kind of where Trip's sitting, so that'll be a cabinet, and that's the dimmer switch. So that, yeah, that's that. As you can see here, actually we've already hooked up the dimmer switch to the puck light wiring. So this is the puck light wiring. We have a positive and a negative. The positive is actually white because they didn't have red, so we knew we had to go from white to red and then black to black. That wire runs all the way up through here and then over here and around. I will explain that more in the puck light video, but basically all you need to know is that you need to wire a 14 gauge wire for your puck lights to the dimmer switch, as well as a 12-2 from the dimmer switch back to your battery bank. I also ran 14-2 wire over here because I'm going to have puck lights under my cabinets. So that was more positive and negative 14 wire over here. Whew, I'm out of breath explaining this. And then I had two puck lights over my bed, which is hooked up to a different dimmer. So that's a different 12-2 wire here. And then the puck light wiring here, which came disconnected obviously, but that runs up into the ceiling too. That was a lot, and if you're confused, I was too. There will be much more of an in-depth explanation about the wiring and how it all connects in the puck light and ceiling video. But what you basically need to know is that you will need more wires than just your 12-2 that goes to the dimmer switches, because you need the 14-2 that connects to your puck lights back to the dimmer switch. So I think we got 75-ish feet of the positive and negative wire for the 14-2 puck light wiring.
You'll put it in your link.
And I will drop it in the link below. Earlier in this video, I was running AC wires or an extension cord to my outlets. Not realizing that my 1000 watt Renogy inverter actually only has 2 outlets. I did realize that, but I did not realize that meant I could only have 2 outlets in the van. So I did redo how I am doing my wiring. We took out 2 of the AC ground wires that I had pre-wired and just kept 2. So the 2 outlets that I'm going to have, one will be by the door, right over here on the outside of the cabinet. So we have this wire here, run for that one. And then I have one next to my bed in between like the kitchen bed area. So there are only 2 AC ground wires run, and it's very easy to tell which ones they are because it was a yellow extension cord. So if we look over in this wiring pile that we have, these are my 2 AC wires. Like I said earlier in the video, we cut both ends. You only want to cut one end where the outlet is. These ones, you do need the plug because they are going to plug in to this inverter. And so we need to connect plugs on the end. Save yourself the trouble and don't cut it off.